And we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our, is it July? July Book of the Month for a Subtle Asian Book Club. Just for quick introductions, my name is Tiffany at Read by Tiffany.
And I am Alexandra at Trilling Pages, and we're so excited to have Kat Cho, who is the author of our Book of the Month, which is Once Upon a K-PROM. As a quick introduction, Kat, can you please give a really brief summary of Once Upon a K-PROM and also share your favorite hobby and activity that you've been loving in 2022?
Sure. So Once Upon a K-PROM is a young adult rom-com about a Korean-American girl whose childhood best friend had moved back to Seoul, South Korea when they were 10 years old. But before he moved, he was like, I'm going to come back when we're both in high school and I'm going to take you to prom because we watched your older sisters go to prom. That was something we always wanted to do together. I swear I'll do it. But when he gets back to Korea, he ends up ghosting her. And the next time she sees him, on TV, he's a famous K-pop idol as part of the biggest K-pop group in the world. So now we fast forward to 7 years later, and our main character doesn't want to go to prom anymore. She's actually kind of doesn't like prom. And surprisingly, her ex-best friend / now K-pop idol shows up to keep his promise, which just comes with all of its own issues, including fans, anti-fans, paparazzi, and stuff like that. So that's what Once Upon a K-PROM is. It's like my love letter to K-pop. And hobby that I've been liking lately, I've been doing a lot of arts and crafts. I kind of went through that whole entire list of things that people got into, like baking bread and stuff. But I landed very happily making physical things I upcycle clothes that I get from my thrift store, and I macrame randomly, just anything where I can have a cute thing at the end.
Were you into the Dalgona coffee phase too?
I did do the Dalgona coffee. Yeah, I definitely did. And if you look at my old social media, there's definitely pictures of it because I was so proud. I was like, it's so pretty. For sure.
It's a good time.
Well, now that you know a little bit about the book, make sure to go read it if you haven't yet. But if you're here with us, you're probably part of the book club and wanting to just chat and just squeal about how cute and fun it was. Please know that we are going to probably go very heavily into spoilers. And another note, Alexandra's Wi-Fi is being really terrible today. So if she's just gone, she's gone. I'm sorry. But we're very excited to kick things off. So with our first question, Kat, Once Upon a K-PROM was just so much fun. There's literally no way else to describe it. And like you said, it felt like a love letter to K-pop fans and K-pop in general. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this story? And then as a follow-up question to that, we're really curious to know who are some of your favorite literary inspirations.
Yeah, so I definitely, my writing is highly, highly inspired by things that I was a huge fan of when I was younger, some things that I'm a huge fan of now too. But two of the biggest things that connected to me, to my culture, for lack of a better word, when I was younger was K-dramas and K-pop. So I mostly grew up in Central Florida where there was not a huge Korean community. But I did have access to some K-dramas and I did have access to some K-pop music through my older sister. And I just really felt the most connection to any type of Koreanness or Korean community, outside of my household when it came to those fandoms. And it was such a positive connection in a time where people didn't actually even know what Korea was, especially where I grew up, people just assumed if you're Asian, you're Chinese or Japanese. So I just have this very deep connection with K-pop, which sounds oh, that's so weird. K-pop is just music and dancing, right? But it meant so much to me. So then when I was thinking of what kind of things I wanted to inspire me for my writing, I was it has to be something meaningful to me because there's so much emotion that goes into writing a book. And you really have to love your subject matter because writing a book takes a really long time. And if you don't like what you're writing about, then it gets boring really fast. So my first duology, Wicked Fox and Vicious Spirits, was based on K-dramas. And so naturally, my third book had to be my love letter to K-pop. And then I also just love the idea of people who were best friends as kids, and then they super changed. And now, as teenagers or, adults in the adult space, they come back together and they have these preset expectations of what the other was supposed to be like because of their old friendship, and they have to reconnect and relearn and kind of get past like their own hangups about what they think their relationship is supposed to be. And so that's very, very much Elena, my main female character. That's very much her issue in K-prom. And I also just, you know, writing about a celebrity falling in love with like a normal person, that's always fun. So it was that's a great bonus too. And then the second part, my inspirations. So I have a lot of inspirations like across, I've been like reading since I was a little kid, but I really do like, because it's the Subtle Asian Book Club, I really do want to focus on the Asian authors who like really gave me the courage to write specifically my culture into my books. Because I've been writing since I was younger, and all of my old stories that I wrote when I was in like middle school, high school, had white protagonists. I didn't think people like us were allowed to be heroes in stories, which obviously is very wrong, but that's what I grew up believing. And so when I read, you know, Ellen O's, you know, Prophecy, which is Korean inspired mythology, or when I read Cindy Pon's books, or Melinda Lowe, or, you know, Marie Lu, like she had, you know, the sci-fi world, and she could have chosen anyone to be her main character, and she chose an Asian boy, and that like really mattered to me as a reader. So I just really loved that about their writing, and they're all just amazing writers too to begin with. So they were huge inspirations of mine. And then as I was writing myself, I got to know some of them, as well as like Julie C. Dow, who like debuted like 2 or 3 years before me and was really, really supportive and really good at giving me advice. So I very much respect all of those authors.
Oh my gosh. Feels so inspired, because I also read all, like not all, but like most of their books as well. And I feel you. It's so wonderful to see like Asian representation when you're reading, and it's very inspiring.
Yeah.
You mentioned Wicked Fox earlier, and it's really cool to see how you took like Wicked Fox as inspiration from K-drama, and now Once Upon a K-prom inspiration from K-pop. But Wicked Fox is a duology with a fantasy romance. So how is your experience writing Once Upon a K-prom different? And did you approach this story differently from your previous works, given that there's a shift in a genre change?
I think the biggest difference between the two was that whenever I wanted to create tension when I was writing Wicked Fox or Vicious Spirits, I could have a magical reason. I could be like, oh, there's not enough like action, there's nothing making the scene interesting, and I could be like, well, then something magical happens and they have to overcome that. And so that's always really nice with fantasy, and it really opens up a lot of possibilities with the world building. Whereas if you're writing contemporary, you definitely have to just rely on being really good at expressing human emotions and like getting your readers to feel something along with your characters and like really relate to them in one way or another. Not that people don't relate to fantasy characters, they do, because they're all human at the end of the day. But I definitely like had moments where I was like, oh, this would be so much better if something magic could happen. But at the same time, like I realized as I got deeper into writing K-prom that like there are fantastical moments that I could create, and those fantastical moments are because the world of K-pop is this like shining, star-studded, like otherworldly feeling thing for a lot of fans. And I kind of tried to like capture that a little bit with Elena and how she viewed Robbie's world as being like different, like walking through a portal into another world of K-pop that she never thought that she was going to experience. So I tried to embrace that. But in a lot of ways, like no matter what genre you're writing, the most important thing that I believe personally is like the relationships, like the human relationships between the characters. So no matter what, that stayed very consistent throughout all of my books. And so in that way, like there was kind of a consistency that, and I didn't feel like I was like too lost in jumping genres.
Yeah. No, you described it so perfectly. I was going to say, even though there technically isn't magic, it feels somewhat magical, like kind of fairy godmother-esque with how the K-prom, like K-pop aspects are just like sprinkling and like dazzling Elena's world. So it was really fun to read about, and definitely have to agree with some of the comments. People are saying like, I love the nods to just the K-pop idol profiles, just like little things that people who are K-pop fans can get, just like seeing who the individual members are. And I saw that your pre-order campaign were the photo cards, and I was like, those are so cute. I am so obsessed. Like, it makes everything just feel so much more real.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, fun fact, I wrote the profiles first. Like, I hadn't written any of the story, and I was like, I have to build the K-pop group first because everything like centers around them and their world. So like, I just invented my ideal K-pop group before I wrote it.
Was there ever a moment where, as you were creating like the different character profiles, you were like, maybe I should change who the main love interest is into a different guy in the group?
No, because I built Robbie first to be the ideal love interest for what this story was, and no one else in the group would have worked for a story. Like, none of their personalities would have fit as perfectly as Robbie did, because I made him uniquely to be the one and only protagonist or love interest for what this story is. Like, the other guys, I would make them and I'd be like, I feel like this is the type of person they'd end up with eventually. I do have that, but that would be a good story. Yeah.
I mean, if we could get like a novella or follow-ups following the other characters, I don't think any of us would complain.
Yes.
Everyone, feel free to tweet at Disney Books and let them know.
So I'm sure the research process of writing this book was super fun, but of course you're incorporating so many things from your own life. It's probably like a lifelong journey. Given we kind of still are in a pandemic, but did you get to go on any fun trips or meet any cool people, wink wink, or try new food in the name of research for this book?
I didn't have to go anywhere because it was based in the United States. And I did very purposely put it in the suburbs of Chicago. I used to live in Chicago for a few years. I have family that are still there, and there's a very robust like Korean American community there. So I really like the idea of setting it there. But so I didn't have to go anywhere for research. A lot of like my knowledge of K-pop is just naturally collected over decades of life. So that's the main thing with that. I have met a K-pop idol before, and I have talked to them about what it was like to be a K-pop idol. It was part of work that I had done before, so there's like non-disclosure and all that fun stuff. But I will say that they wrote a book themselves, and that was and in writing that book, that's how I met them. And in them writing that book, that's how I met them and got to talk to them. So like, there's my little nuggets of clues, but I technically am not supposed to talk about the details because it was through work that I was working with them. But that was a really interesting experience because that person had good insight into like the personal toll, the emotional toll of what it is to be a K-pop idol. And like, that person also had debuted when they were young. They were, they were still a minor when they debuted. So it kind of made me think a lot about like the stress and the pressure that puts on kids. Like, a lot of debut idols are teenagers, and if I had been a celebrity as a teenager, I would have messed up so many times. Like, I would not have been able to handle it. So I was just like, okay, let's see how messy we can make these characters.
Yeah, I feel you in that. Like, now whenever I look at like new idol groups coming out, like, and then I read over their like profiles, and it's like born in 2003 and 2005 and onwards, and I'm like, this is so
baby.
I know, you're a child. What?
They're babies. I mean, well, Taemin, he debuted when he was 14. And like Jungkook debuted when he was 15. Like, a lot of these people, like, we don't think about it, how young they were when they debuted, and because they're trained with like media training and everything like that. But yeah, they were like babies. They were tiny little children, and they were in the public spotlight. It's a lot.
I was watching Produce 101, like the third season, I guess, where they debuted Aislinn. I think like the person who won the whole thing was 13 when she was Wonyoung. Like I think she's part of IVE now. She was 13 when she was on the show, and I was like, what the heck? That's like I think people give a lot of hate sometimes to people who are very young and may not know any better, and people just forget how young they can be.
Yeah, and I think that like, I mean, I think that like people are starting to realize like stop debuting these really young kids. Like there was this reality show where P Nation Size Company and JYP like partnered it was called Loud, in order to like train their trainees, and they chose the trainees for their groups. And P Nation, the youngest member of their chosen group, was like 11 or 12. And there was a public outcry being like, you can't do that. He's too young. And you know, the age hierarchy in Korea is a thing where like people who are too far away in age, like they can't really work comfortably together. So the oldest person in that group, I think, was like 20. And then the youngest one was like 11 or 12. Like that's too much. So I do think there's like some pushback from the public. Like don't debut a 12-year-old.
I have so many thoughts. I'm trying really hard not to go on a K-pop tangent spiral, because I want to talk about your book. But I was like, you know so much. I just want to talk to you about it.
We can talk later.
Yeah, if we have extra time. Okay, segueing back into K-prom. Congrats on hitting the New York Times bestseller list.
Thank you guys.
What has the publishing process been like publishing this novel versus the others, especially during the pandemic?
Yeah, so Wicked Fox came out in 2019, so pre the dark times, and I got to like go in person to stuff and see readers for, you know, and it was I feel really lucky. I have a lot of friends who debuted in 2020 and 2021. And when it was like complete shutdown times. And so I see how much they struggle to like really kind of visualize, like, am I doing well? Like, is my book getting to readers? It's so hard to know that social media exists, but there's still a disconnect that like, yeah, people are tweeting about your book or people are posting about it, but there's a different experience to be able to like have someone come to you, like an individual, talk to you one-on-one, face-to-face, and be like, I love this book because of this, or like, I adore this story, or I adore this character. Like it has a different impact on you as an author. And I think it's super important to be able to have those moments because there's so many alone moments where you're just like in your apartment alone, like writing, and you're like, does this matter? So I feel really lucky that Wicked Fox got that treatment. Vicious Spirits came out in 2020 after the lockdown, but because it was my sequel and because I had the Wicked Fox experience and because we didn't really believe we were going to be in lockdown for 3 years, I was like, this is fine. I can handle this. So I am very grateful that by the time Once Upon a K-Prom came out, we had in-person stuff again. I was telling you guys before we started the panel, like I did get to go to in-person stuff for Once Upon a K-Prom, and it was like surreal. And also I realized like how much my social skills had deteriorated. I was like, oh no, like I have to make meaningful eye contact with people now. But it was so exciting. And I will say that like, I don't know how Once Upon a K-Prom would have done if like we didn't have the pandemic for the last 3 years. But I do know that like one of the biggest ways I picked up to connect to readers in a meaningful way was social media, specifically TikTok. I was not on TikTok before the pandemic. I'm that millennial person who was like, oh, let's see what the kids are doing. They like TikTok. Like I'm home alone. Let me try. And so I picked it up thinking like I was only gonna lurk and watch. And then I made one TikTok and it did like moderately decently. And I was like, ooh, the serotonin. And I just got so addicted to it. But that is, I mean, I don't want to be a cliche, but like I do think the place I connected with readers the most right before Once Upon a K-Prom came out was TikTok. Like partly because the K-pop community is like really active there, and that was my crossover. And just because like that community is so supportive and nice anyway. So like the fact that I got to connect with them right before my book came out was like just the best coincidence of timing, and they were so supportive, and there's such an overlap between K-pop fans and, you know, book fans. So it was really, really great. I'm so grateful for it. And like, I'm like, you know, I'm a convert. I'm like, yeah, TikTok, it can sell books. I'm so sorry to like anyone who's watching who's an author or aspiring author who hates TikTok. Like, I'm not saying you have to be on TikTok, but it helps. I don't know what else to say.
I feel you in that I also did not use TikTok until COVID hit and we were all home alone. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then one day I just downloaded the app and I was like, wait, this is actually very, very fun. So I support you on this.
I still don't have TikTok, but I'm currently Instagram. I'm currently in Instagram jail. So you know what? This might be the plug.
Wait, what? You're in Instagram jail? I'm sorry.
It's one of those things where it's like you're too active on a certain day. Like yesterday, I was just bored. I was just liking too many photos. They probably thought I was a bot, but you know, it's fine. We don't have to talk about it.
I've heard of that happening. I've heard when my friends like post like a big deal announcement, and then you want to like everyone's congratulations and say thank you to everyone. But especially if you're just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, it's the same message over and over, and they're like, you're a bot, go to jail.
Yeah. So, and heat of warning for those who are Bookstagrammers or Instagram users out there. So moving on to the next question, which I'm really excited to ask about. So while you may or may not have had a childhood best friend who was a K-pop idol, how much of this book was inspired by your own personal experiences? Did you go to prom, and did you have an extravagant promposal?
Yeah, all the normal like teenager angst stuff was like very much inspired by my own high school experience. Like half of Elena's like anxieties and flaws were mine in high school. Like she believes that the only reason a person has like any kind of worth or you would pay attention to them is because they have something that makes them special. Like you're captain of the lacrosse team, or you're a K-pop idol, or you know, you're an activist or something. And because she doesn't have like any set label, she's like, she likes a lot of stuff, but she's not superb at any one thing. She thinks that that's the reason why she's forgettable. That's the reason why people who've been important in her life never call her again. Instead of like kind of stepping back and being like, this is a process of growing up. This is a growing pain situation that we all do go through. Like friend breakups happen all the time. Like, you know, if your older sister moves away to college, like I have an older sister. She went away to boarding school when I was still in middle school. And so she left way earlier than I thought she would. And I was like, okay, goodbye forever. So depressed and sad that I didn't have this person that was so important in my life. But like it, you know, it happens all the time. So that was my thing with Elena, was like, I wanted to give her this anxiety that maybe to some people might have felt irrational. But when you're that age, like when you're like 16, 17, 18 years old, you can very easily convince yourself that like everyone hates you and this is the reason why. And I did that constantly. And so it felt very realistic for me to give Elena that same kind of anxiety and flaw. So then, and a lot of like the Korean family dynamics were very much based on my own family dynamics. My mom was great. My mom, I just want everyone to know my mom loved me. She did not care that I was a girl. But older people in my family did treat me differently than my male relatives, because that is a very Korean, especially immigrant mindset. And you know, I hated it when I was younger, but I also think like I let it get to me too much because I was a teenager and everything mattered a lot. I did not have a K-pop idol best friend, unfortunately. I actually don't think I would have fared well having a famous best friend. I was so insecure about myself. If I had such a famous best friend, I would have felt like a speck of dust next to them. Like Elena thinking that she's like not special next to Robbie, like times that by like a billion, and that would have been me. So I'm grateful I didn't have a K-pop idol best friend as a kid. And then I did not have a promposal. I actually went to prom with friends. And it was really fun. I mean, I do have friends who got promposals. There were people who got like silly promposals that were like, you know, kind of cringy, but you secretly are jealous of them. Like, oh, someone likes them so much that they did all this work to promposal for them. But yeah, my prom was like fairly simple and straightforward. Nothing dramatic happened, unfortunately.
You talked a little bit earlier about Elena, so we'll segue into plot and character related questions. Once Upon a K-Prom has a fun cast of characters, including Robbie, Elena, as we mentioned earlier, filled with different styles and personalities. Who is your favorite character to write, and who is the most challenging? And as a bonus, if you could spend a day with any of the characters, who would it be and why?
The most challenging to write, other than the main characters, which I always feel like main characters are the hardest because you really have to delve deep, was JD. And JD is very much tsundere, which, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's like a specific character type in Asia where it's like they're very cold seeming. They seem like really cold and standoffish, but for the few people they love, they're very protective and warm and loving. Like Suga from BTS is considered a tsundere, like very much so, because he's terrifying to most people, even his own members, but he also really super loves his members, and you can see that a lot. So JD is that person in WDB. And so it's hard though, because since he's a side character and since he very specifically has certain motivations for what he's doing to help drive the plot forward, he definitely in a lot of the early iterations seemed very almost villainous. Like he seems too mean sometimes, and I never wanted him to be like a villain. He's Robbie's cousin. Like Robbie loves him, and at the end of the day, he loves Robbie, and he doesn't want anything bad to happen to Robbie or Elena. He just feels desperate to solve his situation and protect the people he loves, and he doesn't love Elena, you know. So why would he need to go out of his way to protect her? So I had to like add in little moments where like he seemed a little kinder or softer. Because I was like, I don't want people to hate him, like, because he is such a huge integral part of like one of the really big plot points. So he was super hard to write. I think the easiest person to write, either Moonster or Jaehyun. Jaehyun because he's like just a sweetheart. He's like such a cinnamon roll, and like it's always easy to write cinnamon rolls. They're just like, and also Jaehyun's very food motivated. So, and that's very much me and my entire family. So it's like he feels very natural for me to write. I know a bunch of people like him. And then Moonster was just fun because he's like the funny person in the group. Like he's the mood maker. He's like the J-Hope, you know. I use a lot of BTS references when I talk about them because I assume everyone knows BTS archetypes. But yeah, he was really fun. And if I were to spend a day with someone, I love Elena, but like we're too similar in our anxiety, so we'd probably feed off of each other in a negative way. And also Robbie, I would hang out with Robbie, but I think the ideal person for me to hang out would probably be Jaehyun, because we'd eat all day, and because he's the least judgmental of everyone in the group. So,
it would just be a fun time. Like, it's just good vibes all around.
Yeah, we just have like the chillest day. Like we'd go on a food tour of New York City. Like we just have so much fun, and I think I would never worry like, oh, are you having a good time? Because he's so easygoing. So I choose Jaehyun final answer.
Yeah,
Elena's relatable, but maybe too relatable.
I mean, I could be friends with Elena, but you know, I also do think like we butt heads every once in a while.
I took the quiz on your site. It was like, who's your bias? And I got Jaehyun, so I'm like, yes.
My sister loves him, and she was so mad she wasn't getting him in the bias quiz, and she like kept on retaking it. I was like, do you want me to just give you the answers? And she's like, no, it has to be real.
So As we were talking about before, WDB is a fictional group, but likely inspired by real life idols. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but who would you say each character is most similar to in real life? And then who is your personal WDB bias? But I'm assuming you're leaning towards Jaehyun.
Okay, so Robbie, I'll start with Robbie because he's the main character. So Robbie, his backstory is based on Yoongi, on Suga, in that he wanted to be a producer. He wanted to write music first, and he was tricked into becoming a K-pop idol. That's Suga's backstory, and I gave it to Robbie because I definitely wanted there to be like, I wanted there to be a reason why he would have become a K-pop idol at such a young age without it being that he's like super driven and like he would do anything, you know, kind of an attitude, because that's just not who Robbie was supposed to be. So he's like kind of a songwriting and rapping prodigy. And so his company was like, I have to debut him ASAP. But looks-wise, he's kind of more based on BTS's Jungkook. And then and a little bit of Stray Kids IN. He's like kind of if you smushed them together, that's like his aesthetic like mix. And then personality wise though, he's a little bit Jungkook in that he's kind of shy. He's very introverted actually, and some people take that to be like he's such a cool guy. But I think it's like he's just young, you know, like when they first debuted, like when BTS first debuted, Jungkook was like, he's the golden maknae, everyone paid a lot of attention to him, but you can tell he's super shy. And now that they're older, he's much more like out there in himself, right? He like finally feels like himself. He's getting his tattoos, he's being true to who he is. And that's like the future journey I could perceive Robbie going on. And then his humor though is, I don't know if anyone is second gen fans, but or are they second or third gen? B2B's maknae, Yuk Sung-jae.
Yeah,
very much inspired Robbie's sense of humor. I just love him.
He's so funny. This is like, I don't know if you ever watch like the Idol Olympics shows.
Yes.
He's always just like so funny on those.
He's very goofy. And do you ever watch We Got Married? The variety show?
No, but I know he was on it with Joy, right?
Yeah. And the way he is with Joy is like he can't take himself seriously, and they were very young when they were on it, and just like makes a lot of jokes and he makes a lot of mistakes, and then you can tell sometimes Joy is getting annoyed because she's like, you're supposed to be romantic right now, like that's the mission, and he's not doing it. And I'm like, that's how Robbie would be in a relationship. He's Yuk Sung-jae in a relationship for sure. So that was a huge inspiration for me there. The other guys don't have as many comparisons, but Jaehyun is based on EXO's Dio. He's kind of serious. He's kind of shy. He's a really good singer. And there's like hints that I try to give when I did some promo material. Like each boy had like a representative song, and Jaehyun's representative song was a Dio song. And then Jun he's the main dancer. So he's actually based on a mix of EXO's Lay, because Jun is the only Chinese member in the group. And then, but he's also kind of a little bit like Astro's Moonbin.
I love Moonbin.
Moonbin's sweeter. He's a little bit softer. And I do imagine Jun as not that I don't think Lay is sweet, but I think he's so weird. Like, which I love about him, that he just is in his own world. So he doesn't notice like if someone else is doing something around him, whereas Moonbin would notice it and he'd be like, are you okay? And Jun is more like that. And then I bet you guys weren't expecting this answer to be so long.
No, we're here for it.
Yeah, we love it. We love it.
Moonster is a mix. So he's a moon maker. So he's kind of he's supposed to be a little bit like J-Hope from BTS, but he's also kind of mischievous, which is very much like EXO's Baekhyun. And he's also very talkative, and that's kind of like Stray Kids Han. So he's like their three personalities kind of like mixed together in a bowl. And then is there another person from Moonster? Oh, his backstory, which you only know because of his bio page, is based on CL from 21. Yeah, she was like born, I believe she was born abroad, but then she moved all over the place. Like she lived in Paris for a little bit, and she lived in Korea, and she lived in all these places. She speaks fluent English because of it. Like she's multilingual, and she's very global, and she's very aware of things. And I always really love that about her. And she gives her a very cool vibe. She's like, she has such a good fashion. She's such a cool personality. And that's Moonster's stage presence. His stage presence is very CL. And then his like off stage presence is very like, you know, J-Hope, goofiness, Baekhyun goofiness, that thing. So that's Moonster. And then JD, it was hard for me to find like a representation of who I thought JD really was, because he's supposed to be the most closed off. So I mostly like found visual representations of him. He's supposed to be very chiseled, like very beautiful, like handsome, almost like you're too beautiful. Like I can't look at your face because like you're otherworldly handsome kind of a feeling. So I kind of like a little bit imagine him. I don't know if you're a fan of 2PM, but like Taecyeon visually, because Taecyeon is like very manly. I think the only thing that makes Taecyeon approachable, and I love Taecyeon, I mean this positively, is he has really big ears, and I love that he has one flaw, right, that makes him not perfect. So I kind of like him as a visual representation for JD. But in like, I think he's the least easy to get to know. So he has the least like comparisons in the real world.
He was in Dream High, right? Because I'm kind of imagining like
he was in
Dream
High. He was the villain in Vincenzo. I don't know if you watched that. Yeah. But Taecyeon is not cold and mean. He's a very nice person. So personality-wise, he's nothing like JD.
Okay. Was that everyone?
That's okay.
Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like we got a lot of comments about all the K-pop love, and we are having a good time about all of the K-pop comparisons. But back to K-prom itself as a book. What was your favorite scene to write and why? And were there any deleted scenes that you wished you could have included?
This is going to give me away, but you know, honestly, my favorite scene to write was the elevator scene. And that was one of the first things I wrote because I knew I wanted it to happen. It's a little bit based on this elevator scene that happened in The Liar and His Lover, which where like,
I love that show.
Yeah, where it's like he doesn't want people to be able to see them together, and so he tries to push them into the corner, but then everyone like floods in, and it's the first time that the two of them are like really close to each other in that drama. And I was like, that makes sense. Like it could happen if you're with a celebrity in the semi-public space and you're like, holy crap, you know, someone's gonna recognize them, let's hide like this. So yeah, I definitely went full K-drama with that one. And then there was a deleted scene, which I really fought to keep, and for various reasons, I understood that it had to be deleted. But it's this flashback scene of the first day that Elena meets Robbie. She's moving into her house, and he's just like riding his bike around on his driveway, and he's like too scared to leave his driveway with his, like, because at the time I think they were like 6 or 7 when they first met, so he's like just practice riding his little bike around. And she says something to him and it scares him and he falls, and so she like goes to help him, and the first time they talk, and he said that his American name is Robert. Like his parents told him he should go by Robert in America because they had, you know, moved to America not too long ago. And Elena says, oh, Robert, that sounds like an adult name. You should go by Robbie. And so Robbie is the name that Elena gave him, and he chooses Robbie as his stage name because that name is meaningful to him because Elena gave him that name. So it was supposed to be like this cute, like he never forgot her kind of flashback, but I had to delete it.
Oh my gosh!
That's so
We are reeling.
I mean, like, I'm glad that we know about it now because I can appreciate it more. But I was like, oh, that's so cute. I wish you got to keep it.
Yeah, every once in a while, I think like I'll post it like on my website or something because it's not that long, but we'll see. I'll have to talk to my editor.
Please.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about creating the relationship dynamics between the characters? Obviously, we adore Elena and Robbie, but we also love the friendship between Robbie and his bandmates, Elena and Soo-hyun, and then the family dynamics, especially between Elena and her twin brother. So we would love to hear more about that.
Sure. Yeah, I think because I'm inspired by K-dramas, K-dramas are really good at building up side characters, and they're really good at like building up the relationships outside of the romantic relationship. I think part of it is probably because we're very Confucius as a culture still, and like your family is kind of like the main reason you exist. Like they're the number one, they're the primary in your life. And so it would be weird for me to not really delve into my characters' relationships with their family since all my characters are Korean. So yeah, Elena's relationship with Ethan is complicated because he is her twin, which means that they should be the closest of any of the siblings, but he's also the only boy in the family. And as I kind of referenced earlier, in Korean culture, boys are kind of held to a higher standard, as boys are held to a higher standard in a lot of Asian cultures. And like, I don't think even it's very malicious these days anymore. It's more like it's like in my family, it's not like they're like boys are innately better than girls. Like no one's saying that to us, but it's kind of like the only people who are ever asked to do chores in my family are the girl cousins. And the only people who have to help with the cooking are the girl cousins. And the only people who have to like stop playing video games to like come like do stuff for the family are the girl cousins. And it's like, I don't necessarily think it's like targeted behavior. I think it's just how it's always been. And so our older relatives just innately still do it now. And that's how Elena's mom is. Like she immigrated to Korea, you know, so she still, and to America, so she still has very Korean mannerisms. And she just treats Ethan better. Like anytime they're fighting, she assumes Elena started it. She assumes it's Elena's fault, which is so frustrating for Elena because Elena is Korean, but she's Korean American. She was born here. She like is like equality exists, mom. So it's very hard for her. But I also do think that it was important for me to show why Elena has such intense and deeply rooted insecurities outside of just like being an anxious teenager, because she's always been thought of last her whole life, and that will get to someone. And I think without that, Elena's behavior wouldn't be very understandable. You'd be like, well, why is she so like obsessed with like being seen? Like, you know, get over it. But it's because she really has felt like the invisible last daughter in this family. So that was really important. Ethan doesn't treat her like that necessarily, but he never thinks about her either because he was raised to not have to think about her. And he doesn't see that as a negative. He just sees that as a neutral. But it's kind of this idea of like, when you grow up used to having a certain amount of privilege, you don't understand how like you ignoring somebody else's struggle is in and of itself like making it harder on them. Like I think a lot of people are like, well, I never like said that you should have to do all the dishes. It's like, yeah, but like you never thought it was an issue that I was always the one who had to do the dishes, and that hurt my feelings. Kind of a feeling. That's how Elena feels versus Ethan. But Ethan's not a bad person. I have had some readers be like, I hate Ethan, and I'm like, oh no, like I don't want you to hate him. He's not a good ally to Elena most of the book, but he's not a bad person, you know? When it came to Elena and Soo-hyun, I really, really wanted it to go against the grain of female rivals. I think that people expected this girl to come in and be like immediately like, I'm a celebrity and you're a nobody and I have all of Robbie and their attention and boo on you and stuff like that. And so I very purposely wanted Soo-hyun to be just so welcoming and warm and kind, and any of the like awkwardness and the negativity that existed in the beginning was Elena's insecurities. And it wasn't Elena's fault, I don't think. I mean, anyone can interpret it any way they want, but in the way that I saw it, right, when I introduced Suyeon to the story, was that she was just another representation of something that Elena felt like she was lacking. And it's not Suyeon's fault. It's it's like just this trauma that Elena has to get over the course of the book. So it was very important for me, like, that even though she was symbolic of pain in Elena's life, that she wasn't trying to be that. And also, I definitely wanted her to show that female idols are treated way differently than male idols.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's given so much less freedom than the boys are. Like, the only reason the boys are so protected is because they're so mega famous. But like, in reality, like, they're still given more freedoms than she is, because they are boys, and male idols in Korea are definitely treated way differently than female idols. They're judged differently by the public. They're treated differently by their companies. It's very, like, Korea is very patriarchal in a lot of ways. So that is something I kind of want to show with her character too. Like, she gets consequences that JD does not get when their relationship is revealed, you know, like, and no one is like, oh, this is like uneven between girl and boy. They all accept that she's going to get these consequences. And that's a problem, you know? So I wanted to share that with her. And then Robbie and his bandmates. I mean, if you're into K-pop and you've watched any YouTube channel or variety show or vlog for any of your favorite K-pop groups, like, you know that, like, some of the best parts of these groups are how much they love each other, like the brotherhood between them and everything like that. I think, like, I'm very, very convinced that however talented and amazing and, like, just deserving people, like, you know, groups like BTS or Stray Kids or TXT or any of them are of, like, all the attention they're getting, a lot of the reasons why the phenomena of K-pop is so huge is because people relate to them on, like, a human level, because they see how they are with each other. And it's like watching, I mean, we all love fan fiction. It is like watching fan fiction. Like, they're giving us such fan service. And every time you see, like, those two members hug each other, you're like, ooh, they're each other's favorite. And, like, you make up all, right? You, like, everyone's like, they ship certain members together, like, platonically or however. And it's just, like, very much caters to that mindset of fandoms, and it's just, like, something that K-pop and Korean celebrities do, like, really, really well. So I just wanted to lean into that with any scenes with Robbie and his group.
And you did all of them so well. When you were talking about Elena and her brother, I know that the characters themselves are very different, but I was thinking of the twins, like, in Strong Woman Do Bong Soon.
Yeah.
And just, like, how they're treated by the mom.
Yeah. That was an interesting drama because the girls were, like, more important in that family. I was like, yes! Like, so
I think it was, like, that era where they had Strong Woman and then also Weightlifting Fairy right after or around the same time. And I was like, yes, female empowerment, like a different new age, or not necessarily new age, but, like, a different kind of mentality. So it's really refreshing to watch.
Yeah, to allow, like, female characters to not have to be, like, fairy-like, right? They were allowed to, especially in Weightlifting Fairy, because that actress, like, she, like, worked out and stuff to be more like a weightlifter. Because before that, she was very wafy. But, like, I like that, like, they weren't like, oh, she looks like, you know, like a sweet little girly girl and she happens to weightlift. That wouldn't have made any sense. So I'm really glad that, like, they really went with allowing her to style herself the way they did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely
and
one of my favorite dramas.
Yes. And lots of love to Soohyun. I know a lot of people were, like, demanding a Soohyun novella in our Discord.
So it's interesting because people have asked me for her story, but I was like, do you want her story after K-prom or the prequel, right? I'm like, which one would be more interesting? Because I have a certain feeling about prequels. Because I think it's like, oh, you already know how it's going to end. Like, why are you reading this? But I do think hers would be interesting because there would how I imagine, this is a Subtle Asian Book Club exclusive. I've never told this to anyone before, but how I imagine is that she and JD didn't get along at first because he's so driven and like seemingly like I'll do anything I can for success. And I feel like she wouldn't have liked that. She would have been like, you're kind of a jerk. I think she would have become friends with like Moonster maybe, or like even Robbie. Robbie's a little young for her, but like she would have become friends with one of them first, and then had to interact with JD, and then slowly softened to him. But I don't think she would have hated him, but it would have been like a version of hate to love between them. Yeah,
we love to see it.
Now I'm like, can we please have like something? We need more of this world. Okay, one final long-ish questions. We talked about K-pop a lot, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. The K-pop industry places a lot of expectations and demands on the idols, like you mentioned earlier, especially with
Zane, I think we're losing you.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna try this again. Okay. The K-pop industry places a lot of expectations and demands on idols, dieting, packed schedules, no dating, etc. Why was it important for you to show the darker side of K-pop?
Well, I mean, part of the plot depends on it.
Yeah.
Like the tension that exists in that part of the plot like wouldn't have existed if I didn't acknowledge that part of K-pop. But I think it's interesting because, you know, as an author of color writing about my marginalized identity and community, there is this interesting thought that like we shouldn't be exposing like the dark side of our communities, like because we already have so much bias against us and stereotypes and all this stuff. But I also just feel like if you're writing a full story and you're making all your characters perfect, then it's not going to be interesting. And then no one will read it. And then people will be like, see, books with people of color don't sell. So it's like you have to have flaws, or you have to introduce like the darkness in order to highlight the light stuff. So that's one huge part of it, like just as a storyteller. But then the other part is also that like, I do think that, you know, there's stuff that K-pop could fix. And I don't think it's going to be fixed unless people know about it and talk about it. Not like I'm being a K-pop activist or anything, but I do think, I mean, I've been a fan for long enough that I've seen some changes come out only because the public have been like, this is awful. Like these things called slave contracts existed before. Like they were called slave contracts. They weren't actually slave contracts because they would lock in an idol for like over a decade. I think it was Dongbang Shingi who was like 13 years. They had a contract for like really a long time, and they had to sue to get out of it. Or like half of them sued to get out of it. And so, and then they were like, and even afterwards, like they said, like, okay, the contract's only for like a decade, but then they would put in a clause that was pretty much like, you can't work in this business unless you sign with us again. So like, even though like the clause and the contracts ended, if they wanted to continue being a K-pop idol, they had to stay with the same company, which like was like, that's not any better. So when the public found out about it, they were like, this is wrong. This is like having someone enslaved. And so now it's 7 years, right? Which is still a really long time, but you know, it's 7 years. So like things can change and they can get better. It just like takes people to like hold the industry accountable. Same when it comes to like providing mental health services. Like I'm not going to go over the sad stuff that have led to like companies finally providing mental health services to their idols, but it does exist. Like I really warn people, if you want to Google it, lots of trigger warnings, lots and lots of trigger warnings for that, because it is sad. But yeah, when it comes to like how Suyin's treated with her dating clause, a dating clause is a thing that exists in K-pop, you know? I didn't make that up. She tells a story that she has 2 senior singers who were caught secretly dating and they were both kicked out of the group immediately. That's based on a real story. Hyuna and E'Dawn were kicked out of Cube Entertainment because they were caught dating. Hyuna was one of the highest earners for Cube, and they still kicked her out. You know, like, so it really sucks, like, for idols, and you know, they don't. Even today, like, people are like, there's like this new thing right now where a lot of Stray Kids fans are really upset because they think that JYP is overworking Stray Kids, and you know, it's probably true, you know, but it's not going to change unless like unless we like say it's not okay. Like, as your fans, we don't think what you're doing is okay. So I do think it's important to talk about things. I do not think that K-prom is going to be like the social awakening for the K-pop industry, but I do think, like, in that mindset, I wasn't going to like gloss over the fact that it exists. It is a rom-com though. Like, it doesn't go. It's not a dark like seedy expose on K-pop. But yeah, I was like, I don't want to like limit myself and only talk about like the happy stuff. Yeah.
Great answer. We want to be really respectful of your time, so we're going to do like rapid fire final round questions. So what's a book that you're looking forward to in the second half of this year or in 2023?
Okay, I brought examples.
Yay!
Right. This book, Majesty, it has a sequel called Venom, Dark and Sweet, and that's coming out next month, August. Love this duology. It's inspired by ancient China. It has tea magic. It's got like really cool, beautiful descriptions of the world and food. And Judy's just like such an amazing writer. So very much excited for the sequel to that. And then Susan Lee's book, Soulmates, comes out in September. I mean, it feels like such a given that I would like a book like this because it's about a regular girl whose old friend becomes a K-drama star and like is in town, and then she helps him go through like a bucket list of things that he wants to do before he has to go back to his celebrity life. So super duper cute rom-com for any K-drama fans out there. And then the last one is a shameless plug for an anthology that I'm in called Eternally Yours, and it's a bunch of paranormal romance stories told by all diverse writers. My story is about vampires, but like it has really cool. I mean, I'll just Melissa De La Cruz, Hafsa Faisal, Chloe Gong, Adib Karam, Anna Marie McLemore, Keith McQuiston, Marie Rutkowski, Julian Winters, plus more is in this book, and their stories are all amazingly fantastic. So I definitely recommend this one.
When does that one come out again?
September 20th? September 20th. I'm pretty sure.
Then we're losing you.
Dang it. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes.
Yes.
I think as soon as you get mad, the technology is like good. And then
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. What is a book that you would recommend to everyone?
This one's so hard. Actually, we didn't think about this, and you sent this to me already, this question.
Sorry.
No. Do not say sorry. I'm just gonna look at my bookshelf and ponder for like a hot second. I really want to give an Asian author recommendation. Okay, well, I will say a book that I have recommended to everyone is Lady Taylor's Daughter, Smoke and Bone trilogy, because that was like super important to me when it first came out, and that's before I was a writer. So like, it definitely has stuck in my heart. I just think it's so beautifully told and written. The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, Korean-inspired mythology retelling of one of our most famous legends, about a girl who jumps into the sea to sacrifice herself to the sea god in order to like help her. In the original myth, it's to help her blind father. In Axie O's version, it is to save her brother, which I think is she tells it really sweet. I'm not even going to give you any spoilers. She tells it very sweetly, but she goes to the realm of the sea god, and it's this very beautiful Miyazaki-esque kind of story. So I think that one is really super duper beautiful. It's so hard. Tracy Chee's book, We Are Not Free.
Yes.
So good. And I will say, like, it's part of the reason it's so good is because it's important. Like, we can't discount that it's like such an important story to tell. It's about Japanese internment. Some of it is inspired by Tracy Chi's own family's history. And you know, she talks a lot about the research she did. So it's definitely, I think she has a YouTube channel, but just go to her social media. She has videos up about the research she did. But the way she writes it, I mean, Tracy's such a good writer. But she writes it from 14 different points of view, 14 different teenagers who go through Japanese internment, and they all have a different perspective on it. They all have a different philosophy on how to survive it. And it's just so beautifully written. And and when I first read it, it a little bit reminded me of The Outsiders, in that it's this group cast of kids who are like dealing with something they should never have had to deal with. And they're all such unique personalities, and they're like found family kind of for each other. So I love that book. I'm gonna end on that one because that one, like, I think is such a good one to read.
So good.
We love that one. That was, I think, a book club pick last February or something.
Oh, okay.
Like, we loved it.
Yeah. And shameless plugs for those who are watching. If you haven't read it, and if you have read it, we have an interview with her on our YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
Very exciting. Okay.
Our next question is, what's your favorite K-pop song and K-pop artist?
Okay, I saw this question, and I swear I did. I tried so hard to find just one answer. I think you can
multiple.
Yeah, I think you can tell from my answer of like who inspired my characters that I don't have just one favorite. I was asked this question on tour, and I cheated, and I'll do the same cheat. I'll name my current favorite from each generation. There's 4 generations of K-pop. For people who don't know, we're currently in the 4th generation. So first generation, my favorite was HOT. And I swear to God, if you've never seen first gen K-pop, just look up HOT Candy, and it's going to be an experience. It's going to be like a culture shock. But like, I loved HOT. Don't judge. They were great at the time. It was the 90s. Leave me alone. I was a child, so whatever. Okay. I only have so many caveats. Like, don't judge me. Second gen, my favorite was SHINee to this day. Like I said, I love SHINee. Like, they gave me so much joy and happiness. They're just great. And then I also did love 21 though. 21 was my girl group favorite of second gen. Third gen, that one's really hard because like third gen, I was like so obsessed with K-pop that I literally liked everyone, I would say. Which is so it's really hard to choose a favorite, but I did really love Red Velvet.
Yes,
they were like a girl group that I really loved. BTS is in third gen, and I did really love BTS too. I still love them now, but I also think like I don't need to like advertise for BTS. I think everyone's gonna listen to them. But yeah, I love BTS. I do, and then B2B. I love B2B, obviously. They're great. And then 4th gen, my current love is Stray Kids. I just went to their concert. They're so good.
Yes.
And then my girl favorite currently is ITZY.
Yes.
Yes.
So much fangirling. I went to a G-Idol concert last night. I was just like, we
last
love
night?
going to concerts. Yes.
Oh my gosh, how was it?
It was great. They're like really good performers. I feel like that was my first ever K-pop concert in person. I was like, I can see the appeal.
It's so fun. The audience gets so involved. Yeah. I'm not surprised that they're good performers. They go hard.
Okay. What is your favorite Korean dish?
This one's hard too. In the summertime, it's mulnaengmyeon because mulnaengmyeon is a cold buckwheat noodle, and it's just like so refreshing. So I really, really love that in the summertime. I literally had it for dinner today because I was like, it's so hot. I'm gonna eat this. And then I'm pretty basic. I really love kimchi jjigae. Like it's pretty standard. Like I'm not gonna say every Korean person knows how to make it, but most Korean people probably know how to make kimchi jjigae. And it's hard to make badly. And I really like galbichim, which is like beef ribs, but like stewed in this like marinade that's very much like a green barbecue kind of marinade, but it's thick, and it's served with like potatoes and chestnuts and carrots and onions and stuff. It's really good.
I am hungry. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't believe we didn't have this on the list, but fave K-drama.
Okay. I'm not going to say my favorite K-drama again because I don't have just one, but I rewatch Oh My Ghostess every year, and it very much inspired Vicious Spirits and Wicked Fox in a lot of ways, and it's so good. It has Park Bo Young, the same main actress from Strong Woman Do Bong Soon, and I super duper love her, and I just think it's a very tightly plotted K-drama. Some K-dramas are like so good for 75%, and then it ends kind of like wah wah. It happens a lot with fantasy K-dramas, I think. But Oh My Ghostess is so strong, and it's about this girl who can see ghosts, and she is very timid, and her dream has always been to be a chef. So she's an assistant chef at this like really, really famous restaurant, and she has a big crush on the head chef. And there's this ghost who is scared of becoming like an angry ghost, which happens if you've been a ghost for 3 years, and her 3-year death anniversary is coming up. So she's really trying to move on to the afterlife. And she believes the reason she's stuck here is because she died a virgin, which is a kind of Korean trope. A female virgin ghost is a trope in Korea. And they're super duper scary, and I'm sure it's very much based in some kind of sexist belief that women who die virgins are like evil. For some reason. And but in the drama, her solution is that she needs to possess someone and have sex so that she can move on. But every time she tries to like possess someone, it doesn't keep. She like gets knocked out of them. But when she possesses this girl who can see ghosts, she gets stuck in her body. And they like end up actually coming up with this deal because the timid girl is like, if you can get my crush to like me, then I'll let you use my body to like sleep with someone once so you can move on or whatever, right? And so it sounds like an awkward premise, but I swear they do it so well. Like that's why it's so good, because they do it so well. And I definitely recommend watching it. Recently I just watched 그해 우리는, the English is Our Beloved Summer.
Oh, I also watched
I love
that.
that one. That was an amazing soundtrack.
And Choi-Shik and Kim Dami are amazing actors on their own, but they have such good chemistry together. And it's like one of those rom-coms where nothing happens and everything happens. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like there is a plot, but it's so slow and so soft that you would expect it to be boring, but it never is. Like because it's so beautifully told and shot, and it's just like it's a great summer rom-com. So yeah.
Taste. I love all of these.
Yes. I support. Okay. If you were a K-pop idol, which position would you be? Leader, main vocal, main dancer? What else is there? Like rapper?
I've been asked this before, and my friends who are sometimes on the panel with me always have a different opinion than I do. I feel like I would be the main rapper only because I'm not a good singer, and I could maybe rap. I've never tried, but I think I could. I'm just going with like the least evil, right? Like I don't want to force people to listen to me sing. But I think I could rap and not make people upset. Maybe. Leader, I could potentially do the job of a leader, but I don't want to be the leader because being the leader in K-pop is a thankless job. It's so much responsibility, and I don't want to do it. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with main rapper.
Yeah. So our final question for you is there anything that you're currently working on? We know you have your anthology, but what can fans of yours expect next?
So it's not announced yet, but I'm gonna go back to contemporary fantasy, and it's based on Korean mythology again, and a lot of angst. I can't talk too much about it, but like a lot of angst. There's like sexy gods in it.
We stand.
Sexy Korean gods, yeah. So that's coming up next. I also have another anthology that's coming out next year. It's like this magic school anthology called The Grimoire of Grey Fates, where all of our stories interlock because it's about a professor is murdered at this magic school, and all of our characters are trying to figure out how he died and who did it. Who done it?
Oh, that sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Okay. We're so sorry for going over time, but thank you so much for being here with us today. No, we enjoyed every second of it, and I'm sure we could like listen to you talk and chat with you even more. But thank you everyone who joined with us today. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't watched Once Upon a K-Prom, if you haven't read Once Upon a K-Prom yet, you need to read it. Join us next month. Our August book of the month is The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, and we will have a live show with him in September. Am I missing anything else?
We are also hosting a
Oh, we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Both of your faces are like, okay. We are also hosting a casual summer reading challenge. I can't remember the exact prompts for it, but check out our Instagram and join us on Discord for more details about that.
Yay! Thank you so much, Kat. We love chatting with you. If you have any lasting messages, we would love to hear it. Otherwise.
Oh, no, thank you for having me and letting me ramble about K-pop nonstop. Everyone go check out Once Upon a K-Prom. And if you like K-pop books, then XOXO by Axio, K-pop Confidential by Stephen Lee, and I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. Check those out too.
Yay! Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.